I'm Erica Lynn, and we all know the ocean is the most demanding environment on Earth, consistently testing the reliability and durability of our equipment. When you spend as much time fishing as I do, you know that reliable gear is essential for staying on the water. This is why I went with Abyss Battery to power my trolling motor, electronics, and outboard. The guys at Abyss Battery are rattling the saltwater industry by manufacturing performance marine batteries specifically designed for sonar, outboards, trolling motors, and electronic fishing reels. They're also Bluetooth compatible, so I found checking battery statuses right on your phone while you're out on the water is a huge game changer. To learn more about why Abyss batteries are used by the pros and factory installed by premier boat builders, visit abyssbattery.com.
Hey everyone, Will Cooper here, host of Hunt Stand's Make Your Mark podcast. Join us as we dive deep into the world of hunting and outdoor pursuits. We've brought together some of the most accomplished individuals in the industry to share their invaluable insights and experiences with you. But here's the kicker. It's not just about hunting tips and tactics. We're exploring how you can carve your own path, elevate your skills, and gain some wisdom from the best in the field. So whether you're a seasoned hunter looking to fine-tune your skills or a newbie eager to learn, our podcast has something for everyone. Stay tuned for more exciting guests and hotter topics. Don't miss out and subscribe to Hunt Stand's Make Your Mark podcast today and start making your mark in the great outdoors.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. The guest on this episode, Ellen Zachos, was a fun one. She's an interesting and very intelligent person. She made me laugh throughout the episode and also taught me a lot. She's the author of Backyard Foraging, 65 Familiar Plants You Didn't Know You Could Eat, as well as many other books. She has a website, backyardforager.com, where she posts recipes as well as different cocktails she's always creating from her foraging finds. She also has classes that you can take on her website as well. So, if you haven't heard of her, she's definitely one you'd probably want to check out, probably buy her book, and definitely listen to this episode. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did recording it. So here we go. Okay, I'm sitting here with Ellen Zachos, and she is an author as well as a blogger, I believe, and I have a few questions to ask her. So, Ellen, I'm just going to get started and say, tell me about yourself and how did you get started foraging?
Well, first of all, thank you for wanting to talk to me. I appreciate the interest. And I lived in New York City for many, many years. And you would not think that New York City is where somebody would learn to be a forager, but it is. And my profession there was I designed, installed, and maintained rooftop gardens. So I worked with plants. I was a gardener, a professional gardener. And one of the people that worked for me was a forager. And one day we were sitting having lunch. I also did backyards, and she plucked a leaf of garlic mustard off of the lawn and suggested I add that to my sandwich. I thought she was crazy, but I did it anyway because I trusted her, and it was delicious. And that was my aha moment. You know, I thought, wow, how much other free stuff is out there that's delicious that I don't know is edible. And I was already interested in local seasonal food, and I love to cook, and it just kind of struck me like a bolt of lightning.
Wow, that's kind of like mine. Not quite like that because I didn't.
What was yours? What was yours?
So as a little kid, my dad gave me the book. It was survival, and it was Army Field Manual.
Yes.
Within that book, there was a bunch of different things about foraging certain plants and how to skin an animal and eat it and all those things. And it just kind of intrigued me. So as I started getting older, I started looking more into it. And then I kind of fell out of it and I just started hunting. Well, then as I'm sitting in a tree stand, as you know, there's plenty of time to start pondering things again.
Right.
So then I started thinking, man, I wonder how much food is all around me. So obviously I started with the easiest thing, which is mushrooms, right? And so I
No,
bought,
that's not the easiest thing.
well, to
I hope
me,
you're being sarcastic. I mean, they're delicious, but by no means the most easy thing.
well, I don't mean easy, but the most obvious selection for a lot of people, actually, I mean, your morels, of course, and so things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so I, started asking a few people and talking to them. They're like, yeah, come on out. I'll take you out. And started doing that. And then a guy at work actually got me started finding hen of the woods. So, and I mean,
One of my
so
favorites. Yeah.
yeah, yes. And so he taught me and showed me a special dish, how to prepare it. And you cook it down in oil and Italian spices and green peppers in it. And it's just wonderful dish. So that kind of got me intrigued even more. And I thought, okay, what else is out there that I don't know about?
Yeah.
And and that's
A
kind
lot,
of
right?
right, right. So once you got started though, Ellen, what resources did you use and what would you recommend to someone?
Well, I'm somebody who loves to read. So the first thing I did was, I mean, if you can see that shelf of books behind me.
I do.
Um, a, a lot of those books are foraging books. I read everything I could get my hands on. I love to read. But also being in New York, I was very lucky because I had some great teachers nearby. And the friend who gave me that leaf of garlic mustard was one of my first foraging teachers. You may have heard of Leda Meredith. She's also written several books on foraging, and she's a dear friend. We just actually last weekend were at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, which you should come to someday. By the way, Lucas, it's
I
a great event.
I found out a little bit late on that
Yeah.
one.
Okay. Well, next
So
year. Yeah.
yeah.
So she was there, and I took classes with her and Gary Linkoff, who's just was a wonderful mushroom teacher. I took classes with him at the New York Botanic Garden, and I just started to I went in search of as much information as I possibly could. I read, I got out in the field, I found out about the North Carolina Wild Foods Festival, and Sam Thayer was talking there that year, and I was like, I'm gonna go meet Sam Thayer. And now we're friends, and that's wonderful. But, I just did everything I could possibly think of to absorb as much information as I could.
That's really cool. That's cool. I like that. It's neat that you can actually go interface with these people. I've never even thought about that. It's one of those things that until
Dude.
recently I've learned by doing some research that there's all kinds of festivals and things out there. And
Oh, yeah. And we're a friendly bunch, too. I got to tell you, this was my 6th or 7th year at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival. I teach there every year, and it's like a family reunion. I only see these people once a year, but it's so nice to be with people who don't look at you like you're crazy when you tell them you're a forager, or who don't think you're talking about dumpster diving. It's just a lovely feeling to be with people who think it's perfectly normal to live that way.
see, and that's one of the things I had a idea in my head, or even people I talk to, they're kind of talking about, oh, well, isn't it the stereotypical kind of, living out in the woods hippie that doesn't like meat and all these things? And I'm like, I don't really think so, but,
No.
need to reach out to some more people and find out.
There's all kinds, and that's one of the things that's so cool. I mean, at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival and all these other events I've been to, first of all, nobody talks politics, which is great because I'm sure we'd like be rolling on the ground fighting with each other, but we have enough sense to leave that behind. And you've got all sorts. You've got hunters, you've got vegans, you've got people who love to cook, people who are raw diet followers, you've got every kind of person out there, mushroom fanatics, people who only are interested in greens. And it's a wonderful coming together of people who share a common interest, and we all kind of forget about our differences and really focus on the things that unite us. And it really feels wonderful. I know that sounds super corny, but it's the truth. I love it.
No, it actually doesn't sound corny at all. I believe the same thing. If you look at even hunters, they come from all different walks of life and all different backgrounds, and it's neat to see them get together. And that's like they do backcountry hunters and anglers rendezvous every year. And I mean, there is people from all walks of life. I'm going to try and get out and go to that too. And they even have foragers there. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that just, it interests me because there's people that have never even hunted or foraged or done any of that, but they want to learn. And that's really neat. That Hank Shaw is one person that kind of piqued my interest in this even more. And to see him doing all sides and aspects. And one of the things he said that kind of resonated with me that I would like to experiment more with was, if you see the animal eating it, it's a good chance that the animal, when you cook it, pairs well with it.
Yes, and I'm also a big fan of Hank's. He's a really interesting guy and knows his stuff. And I remember reading what he wrote about that. That's one of the places he takes inspiration from. If that's what the animal is feeding on, or if you see that growing around you while you are hunting that animal, think about putting those foods together. I'm not a hunter, but I love to shoot, and I've been looking online for. I've been told that there's all these organizations that especially are interested in teaching women how to hunt. And I think they must exist every place except in New Mexico, because I can't even find a Becoming an Outdoor Woman program in New Mexico, and they're supposed to exist in every state. So I got to look a little harder, because it's something that my husband and I really, I want to start with small game, and I really want to learn how to do that.
I'll do a little more research and talk to a few people I know and try and make that happen for you, because I would like to see it. I would like to see that too.
Thank you.
So the resources that you did use, I mean, are there any books that you would recommend to me, or?
Yeah. I would recommend Sam Thayer's books as the absolutely top recommendations. And gosh, I should look over. Hang on a second. I'm going to look over on my bookshelf. Okay, so it's Nature's Garden, The Forager's Harvest, and the last one is something like Incredible Edible Plants, 36 Plants That Will Change Your Life. And they are all amazing. And he's such a wonderful writer. He has vast amounts of experience. He's also an impeccable researcher, and he has a great sense of humor. So you're reading this stuff, and it's not just plant profiles. He makes you laugh out loud when you're. Do you have Sam's books? Do you know?
I do not. I do not have his books.
I can't recommend them highly enough. I recommend them even before my own books, and that tells you something.
I thought your book was good.
Thank you. I think it's very good. And I think it's great for beginners because, it gets you started, in your own surroundings where you know the plants, and it takes some of the fear out of identification if it's growing in your own backyard. But if you decide to take it to the next level, Sam's books are amazing. The one thing he doesn't do a lot of is recipes. Because, of course, he loves to eat and he appreciates good food, but that's just not something that he writes about. So I think his books are essential. And to be honest with you, I really think Yul Gibbons is a good read. I know he's an old-fashioned read, but I like his books, and I've learned from his books too. So I admire those as well.
So the Sam Thayer, because I've read some books that actually get so deep into the science of the plant and the genus and everything that it loses.
No, he's not going to. Yeah, no, Sam is very practical. And I'm not going to say he doesn't go deep, because his chapter on acorns is like 30 or 40 pages long, but it's good information. And he does not get bogged down in, which species of quercus is the best one to harvest, but he will tell you the difference between red oak acorns and white oak acorns. And people need to know that. They don't need to know it in enormous detail,
right,
but they do need to know that there's a difference, and probably they're going to need to be processed a little differently.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. I like that.
There's also some good websites out there. You might have seen Green Dean's website. He's based in Florida, so not all of his plants are going to be relevant to the entire country. His website, I think, is called eattheweeds.com. But he's got really good information, and I have a lot of really good recipes on my website. I'm really focused not only on the foraging but on the cooking, because I love to eat, and I think it's important to know what to do with your harvest. You put all that work into gathering, and when you get home, you're not going to be able to find, dock leaves in the joy of cooking. So if you go to backyardforager.com, you're going to find those recipes that'll help you turn your wild harvest into something really delicious.
It's good that you said that. I was going to get into that later, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask you then. What is your favorite thing for each of the seasons? And then how would you like to prepare that?
Okay. Well, it's mushroom season right now, right? So, fall to me means mushrooms. There's other wonderful things, but fall to me means mushrooms. And I love hen of the woods. Yeah, I think hen of the woods might be my favorite fall mushroom, although I'm also very fond of honeys. I really do like honey mushrooms, but um, I just love hen of the woods. So when you were making me hungry earlier when you were describing that dish, I guess my favorite way, it's hard to pick just one recipe, but one thing I like to do with hen of the woods is break the fronds off, keep the pieces large, toss them in olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and roast them at about 425 degrees so that they just get a little bit of caramelized on the outside, but they still stay soft inside. And I really recommend when you're starting out with a wild ingredient that you keep it as simple as possible so that you can understand the flavor of that wild ingredient. Don't go pouring cheese sauce over your milkweed at the first time because it's going to be delicious, but it's going to taste like cheese sauce. So I would say try a really simple preparation, or if you want to stir fry those mushrooms and put them in with a simple pasta or a simple rice, do that first. It's a really great way to appreciate the flavor of the mushroom if you're lucky enough to find something like hen of the woods or porcini or honeys in the fall.
So I believe I found some porcinis the other day, or something that's very similar to them. It was a brownish color on top, and it actually had almost like a honeycomb structure on the bottom. Is that what that was?
Well, I couldn't possibly tell you just from that description, but I can tell you that I don't think there are any boletes that will kill you. And boletes are the mushrooms that have those pores on the bottom as opposed to gills
Right.
or teeth. But
Okay.
but there are many boletes, and not all of them are delicious, and many of them have brown tops. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that one, Lucas.
Okay,
Sorry,
that's okay.
I'm not gonna
I've actually got
idea
a.
for you that way.
I'm going to look in Greg Mueller's book and try and find some more insight on it before I go picking them. But I did mark them, and I found a whole lot
Good.
of them too. So.
Oh, well, that's great. That's great. So I'm supposed to be taking this. Sorry, so that was fall. So
Yes, that's
winter,
fine.
I'm thinking, so that's fine. I don't have to do it, or
No,
that's
you.
fine. I should go
I
ahead.
still would like to know. I'm curious.
No, okay. Well, where I live, it gets pretty cold in winter and there's not a lot to forage. So I'm going to go with acorns for winter because I love acorn flour and I use it a lot. And I remember the first time I processed it thinking, oh my gosh, this is so hard. But I didn't feel like I was really a forager until after I did it. And it really wasn't that hard. It takes a while, especially if you're cold leaching. And if you want to use that acorn flour as flour, you need to cold leach it because that leaves the starch intact. And that's going to help it bind if you use it in a bread or any kind of baked good. Whereas hot leaching, which is much faster, cooks the starch. And that means you can use it as a nut or you could use it as a soup base, but it's not going to bind as well as flour. But acorn flour is delicious. It's got a lot of protein. It's got a rich flavor. That's my favorite winter foraged item. No question about it.
So as far as the leaching, is that to take the tannins out of it, or is that?
Yeah, it is. And you need to take the tannins out for two reasons. First of all, because they have a bitter flavor, so they're not pleasant to eat, but also because tannins inhibit the absorption of nutrition in your intestine. So even if you don't think it tastes bitter, some people have a very high tolerance for bitter flavors. And but if you consume a lot of tannins, you're not going to be able to absorb the nutrition that you're getting from other foods. So it's a good idea to do that leaching. Certain acorns have more tannins than others. There's always people who say, oh, I found this sweet acorn. It didn't need any leaching at all. I've eaten a lot of acorns in my life. I've never found one that I didn't need to leach, but maybe it's out there. It's kind of like the white whale. But yeah, I've never found it. I've always had to leach. But I know that things like bur oak acorns have fewer tannins than many other acorns, so you'd probably have to leach that a little bit less.
Okay,
Have you
that's good.
have
to
you
know.
done acorns yet?
I have not. I have not. I tried to eat one when I was a kid, and it was very bitter. And
Yeah,
then I
well,
toasted one. But-
yeah. No, you should try acorns. You're going to feel a great sense of accomplishment. And it's not hard to do. You just need to follow the steps. In fact, if you remind me, email me. I have a PDF that I made up about how to hot leach acorns, and I hot leached the first time. It's a good way to get started. So if you want, I can send it to you. It's step by step with photos.
Sure, I'd like that. I'll even post
Okay.
it on the link on this this
Okay.
podcast too. So
Sure.
everyone
Okay.
can have it.
That'd be
Okay.
great. Yep.
All right.
Oops.
So,
Spring. I'm going to cheat on spring, and I'm going to say greens.
okay.
Because there's so many. How do you choose between nettles and dandelions and dock greens and all those wonderful things that come up in the spring? I love them almost equally. Maybe nettles are my favorite. I don't know. Do you have a favorite spring green?
The only ones, no, I don't. In fact, I haven't really picked any. So, are there any specific or something unmistakable as far as a green that you would recommend to a
Yeah.
beginner?
Well, I think almost everybody recognizes a dandelion, right? I mean, you would. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
I've known,
Um, yeah.
yeah, I've
So
known
I
that you
think
could eat
that's a
them. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's I no, that's okay. I think that's a good one to start with because it is so easy to recognize. You want to harvest them before they flower. They'll be more tender and less bitter then. And sometimes in early spring, you can eat them raw, but most people find them more palatable if they're stir fried or blanched. I love things like pokeweed or milkweed stems, which I guess are not leafy greens, but they're green, and those are also delicious. There's so many greens that come up in spring. It's pretty much harvest as much as you can, and then just get them in the freezer and deal with cooking them later, because you want to harvest while they're still nice and tender.
Okay, so it's funny you bring up milkweed because as a
Mm.
hunter, hunters are using it more and more, using the floss of the milkweed for a wind check to see which direction the wind is blowing.
Somebody just commented on one of my YouTube videos about exactly that, literally like 3 days ago, and I had never heard that before. And this guy said, I use that when I'm deer hunting to see which way the wind is blowing. I had no idea you could eat it. At that stage, you can't eat it, but earlier in the season, it's got a lot of different edible parts. So I think, and you could harvest the immature pods and serve that with venison as a vegetable. That would be really tasty.
It sounds good. It sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So I just found it really interesting when I was reading your book and I watched a YouTube video where you were actually talking about it and I thought, oh my gosh,
Oh,
I've always waited for it to actually bloom so I could take the floss and not even think about eating a pod.
wait, was that you that left the comment on my video?
It was not. It
Oh,
was
that's
not.
so funny. Okay, all right, nice coincidence. Yeah.
So that's
So,
good and definitely
yeah,
good to know.
I love milkweed. In fact, I've planted it in my yard here in Santa Fe, and it was great this spring because if I had no veg in the refrigerator and it was dinner time, I could go out and I was harvesting those stems for weeks. And by continuously cutting them, they would regrow, and so they were young and tender for a much more extended period of time. So that's really that was actually front yard foraging though, not backyard foraging, but still, it counts.
It's foraging either way.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember we used to take the milkweed, and that was actually until I started talking to some people about using it for hunting as a wind check, which, I mean,
Hmm.
it's great and it makes sense because you can see it a lot more than a fine powder. It stays in the air
Sure.
so much longer. But we used to pick it when we were kids so we could put butterflies and attract butterflies with it. So, and feed our caterpillars.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's the preferred food of the monarch. And I got to tell you, I get asked a lot, but if you eat all the milkweed, you're not leaving anything for the monarchs. You know what? People who ask me that or who say that have clearly never stood in a field and been surrounded by acres of milkweed. It has a very aggressive growth habit, and the thing that's most threatening to the monarchs is not foragers picking milkweed, it's the loss of habitat due to big agriculture. So I don't want to even get into that, but it's something that I feel most foragers are knowledgeable about and concerned, close enough to the environment that they know how to harvest sustainably and leave enough behind for the monarchs, for other foragers, for other animals. So
Okay, that's good. You actually mentioned that because that was
yeah,
one of my next questions for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So,
I've heard
are
it
there any
before.
guidelines or rules of thumb to live by as a forager?
Yeah, there are. There definitely are. And I think I think most foragers are fairly connected to their environment. You kind of have to be if you're going to be out in the wild collecting wild edible plants and mushrooms. You it deepens your relationship with your surroundings because you look at it differently. It's not just, oh, that's pretty or oh, that's a steep hill. You're always looking around you. You're seeing what's growing there and you're thinking about your relationship to it. So I think that most foragers are really open to the idea of how to do what they do sustainably. We don't want to pillage the landscape. We want to be able to feed ourselves well for years to come. And to do that, you can't just go in and take everything. You look at how much there is and you say, wow, there's not that this year. I'm not going to harvest anything. Or maybe I'll just take a few berries. Or maybe there's a ton of stuff and you say, hey, I can get a good load of this and leave plenty for the bear, for the deer, for the skunks, for the raccoons, for everything else that's out there, for the other foragers. Um, and I think you need to be aware of that. You're not just feeding yourself. There are animals that need these things to survive. There are other people that want to eat this food, and you need to leave enough behind so that the plant can propagate itself, so that it can be a perennial vegetable or a perennial mushroom, so that you're not going to devastate the harvest and not have it to go back to. As far as actual percentages, I really couldn't say never take more than 10%, never take more than 20%, because a lot of that will depend on how much there is to begin with.
That's good to know. I've always heard like a 20% rule, but I guess that makes sense that.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people they do say never take more than a quarter. But if you only found, 10 blueberries, which is of course never going to happen, but I think you really need to use your common sense and think about how much there is to begin with, and you might have to take less than 20% if there wasn't a lot of what you were foraging for.
That makes sense. That's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we still have to do summer. What your favorite thing is?
Yeah. Summer is actually really easy for me because it's black raspberries.
Oh, I love raspberries. I
Yeah,
don't have black raspberries, but yeah.
Well, I have the mother lode of black raspberries, and I'm not telling you where they are.
That's okay.
I know you wouldn't come anyway, but I mean, I love all the fruits. I love blueberries. I love blackberries. I love mulberries. But there's something about the flavor of black raspberries that I find really irresistible. And I'm fortunate that I have a large field where I can go, and they ripen over a period of about 3 or 4 weeks. So you can really harvest a lot and freeze them. And there's nothing like February when you're wondering what to make for dessert and you say, "Ooh, I could make a black raspberry crumble or a black raspberry ice cream," and get that flavor of summer. And it takes you right back to where you were when you picked those fruits and the sweat was dripping down your face because it was so hot and so humid, and you're in this field and you're like, is there a bear out there that wants this fruit? It's an immediate memory trigger to me, and that's very precious.
That's kind of funny you said that. My grandmother always told me that her grandmother would say when they were picking in the garden that it may not feel like it's worth it now, but it will be this winter.
Oh, well,
So-
she was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I recently saw a picture of you, and I believe you were teaching a class, and you were chest deep in a marsh digging for something.
Yes, I was not actually teaching that class. I was taking a class from Sam. That was at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival, and I was up to my neck in the Mississippi. It was in flood, so it was deeper than usual, and we were digging for lotus tubers with our feet, because lotus tubers are submerged in the mud. And what you do is you have to find the leaf and you follow the stem down, and then you do this sort of like dance with your feet in the mud, digging with your toes to find the tuber. They are really worth it, though. They're so tasty and they're just beautiful. Have you ever seen a lotus tuber?
I don't know if I have, to be honest. I really don't.
They look like, some people call them mud bananas because they do look like bananas. But when you rinse them off and you cut into them, they have this very decorative pattern of holes that you slice them into medallions, and they're very pretty to look at. You have my book, and it has a picture in there, so you could see what I'm talking about.
I have
I'm not
seen
describing it very well, yeah. And they're just delicious. So that's what I was doing in that photograph. I was taking a class, and it was a lot of fun.
So how do you cook those then?
Well, you can cook them a lot of ways. You can slice them up and put them in a soup or a stew, and they really they're not going to disintegrate the way a potato would. But my favorite way is to slice them up and just pop them in the Fry Daddy. And I don't fry a lot of foods because I know it's not healthy, but I just think that's the best way to do the lotus. outside gets crunchy and the inside stays nice and soft. Just put a little salt on that and you are good to go.
So would you rather have that than a French fry?
Yeah, I would. I really would. And I like French fries, but I'd rather have Lotus. You can't buy them easily at McDonald's. So,
Okay, that's good. So one of the things in your book that I saw that I kind of blew my mind, because almost everybody has them in landscape as far as decoration, but hostas.
I knew you were going to say hostas. Yeah. Hostas are delicious. And, they are sold as a commercial vegetable in Japan. And so often we can find out about plants with edible characteristics if we look to other cultures, things that we don't eat anymore here, but the people in other parts of the world do. So hostas are eaten in Japan. They're sold in markets in Japan, but we can harvest them in spring before the leaves unfurl. And they are just delicious, either stir-fried or tossed in a little olive oil and roasted. And one of my favorite ways to eat them is just roasted until they're soft enough to pierce with a fork. And then I wrap them in a little prosciutto and eat them on a bed of garlic mustard. They are garlic mustard pesto. And they are it's a wonderful spring dish. I highly recommend it.
That's interesting. So you don't want to actually eat the leaves. You want to eat the pods before they unfurl.
No, it is the leaf and the stem, but before it unfurls, it just looks like a stem. And you can eat the leaves after they unfurl, but they get a little bit fibrous. So if you do that, it's best to chop them up and use them in a soup. But it's when the leaves are just so young, where the spears are coming up out of the ground before the leaves unfurl, that's when they're at their absolute tender best.
That's good to know. That's definitely good to know.
Like you said, everybody's got them in the landscape. So, why not give it a try?
I think I'm going to have to do that this year. And
I hope you do.
I'll email you and let you know how it goes.
Okay.
So, I guess it's been pretty good. I don't really have a whole lot more questions to ask for you, but I think as I continue to forage, I'll probably be reaching out to you again, and maybe we can get together and discuss more things.
Well, please feel free to ask me anything. I love answering foraging questions. It's the thing I'm most passionate about in my life. I mean, other than people, the people in my family, but as something to do, I just couldn't be happier than when I'm foraging or cooking with wild food. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And I want to see you in Prairie du Chien next year at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival.
Is it always like the first week of October, or is it?
It's usually the third or fourth weekend in September, and I don't think they've set the dates for 2020 yet, but they will be setting it soon, and I will try to remember to email you when the dates are announced.
Okay, so as long as I don't go elk hunting, because that is in September.
Yeah,
but
I could see why elk hunting would be a big draw.
Yeah. And I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But otherwise, I would love to be there. Love to meet you in person. And we'll talk more about it. But if someone would like to get in touch with you or start following you on social media, where can they find you?
So my website is backyardforager.com. You can find me on Facebook at The Backyard Forager. That's my business Facebook page. And I'm on Instagram as Ellen Zachos.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe on whatever platform it is that you're listening to. Also, you can find us on Instagram at Publicly Challenged. And you can also find us at Publicly Challenged Podcast or publiclychallenged.com. So please reach out to us with any questions, comments, concerns, or maybe you'd even like to be on the show. And once again, thank you so much for listening.
Hey everyone, Will Cooper here, host of Hunt Stand's Make Your Mark podcast. Join us as we dive deep into the world of hunting and outdoor pursuits. We've brought together some of the most accomplished individuals in the industry to share their invaluable insights and experiences with you. But here's the kicker. It's not just about hunting tips and tactics. We're exploring how you can carve your own path, elevate your skills, and gain some wisdom from the best in the field. So whether you're a seasoned hunter looking to fine-tune your skills or a newbie eager to learn, our podcast has something for everyone. Stay tuned for more exciting guests and hotter topics. Don't miss out and subscribe to HuntStand's Make Your Mark podcast today and start making your mark in the great outdoors.